What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Survivor Now podcast. Wow, the second podcast today. This is going to be like a marathon. We're going to be podcasting for like 3 hours. Real quick, if you guys didn't see it up on our channel, you can go check out our season 44 cast assessment right now. Go watch us make all of our predictions on where people are going to finish for the upcoming season and the biggest obstacle standing in their way to becoming sole survivor. I think we all had an amazing time. It's a fun watch. So I definitely recommend going and checking that out. But I cannot do this show today by myself. We are here to cover Survivor Australia, Heroes versus Villains, episodes 10 through 12, week 4. And I am joined by my two lovely counterparts. No guests today, but that is not going to hold back the entertainment as we have a ton to speak on. First off, help me by welcoming Tegwith back. Tegwith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. I thought it was a great couple of episodes, so I'm super stoked to talk about it with y'all. And I'm loving the amount of Survivor talk I'm doing today. I'm like super into it.
Mix that with all your TikToks. You're not Survivored out at the moment.
No such thing. There's no such thing.
I love the answer. And as always, we are joined by everyone's favorite castaway, Eric Abraham from season 41. See, I almost called you Eric. Abraham.
What's Randy? Are you burnt out, Randy? What's going on here, guys?
Finding his teeth. Hey, look, it's been a long day. Let me tell you that. But Abraham, how are you doing, man?
Hey, look, no complaints, man. Loving to see Survivor. This Australian Survivor is fire. If you're not out there watching an episode of Australian Survivor, your Survivor game is not up to speed. I mean, there's so many moments that can help you when you get selected to be on Survivor. This is like the one-on-one on how to be a Survivor player. So King George, I got to give King George credit.
He's still going strong.
But ruthless.
Woo. I mean, we've talked about this before, but everyone here in this room, do we all agree that Survivor Australia is the best? I can't remember if you did, Tegwith, if you agreed with us.
I'm like 50-50. I love Australian Survivor. I think that there are a lot of strengths that it has that I think US Survivor does not have. However, I do think there are some strengths that the US Survivor has that Australian Survivor doesn't have. So I think it really depends on the episode, the season. I think it's really good, but I sometimes think it's like comparing apples to oranges. Or like tangerines to oranges. I don't know. It's like
well, yeah. A little similar, but two different products. No, I definitely agree with that. And I'm going to we'll get into it a little bit later on in the show, but there were some things that I noticed this week that went, okay, Australian Survivor does have its flaws. And I'm sure we're going to get into that last tribal council and give our opinions on that because it kind of robbed us of a really huge move. But let's start with who we lost this week, and then we can kind of spiral off of that. First off, it was heartbreak for pretty much everyone watching the show when we had to say goodbye to Jordy. The problem with that is we shouldn't have had to say goodbye to Jordy because he was able to successfully do an immunity idol pass by getting Shawnee's immunity idol passed over to him. So that left Jordy and Liz with immunity idols to use, and they could have sent anyone they wanted home. So let's start with Abraham here. Was this a huge mistake on Jordy's part, or did he have the right idea here to try to keep the idols and still make the move happen?
First of all, Jordy is one of my favorites from his first conception on his first season out there. And I rooted for Jordy, but I also said we got Jordy and we didn't get the Joker. Because the Joker is what got him put out the game. Jordy was kind of more reserved. We saw him, he's becoming a new father. All that is great. But if you got an idol, you're outnumbered on the tribe, and you on there to get picked off, that's the time to play it. You got every sign that says play your idol. Every sign that said play your idol. And I don't know where Jordy missed the signs at, but you knew you was not on the top at all. You knew it's going to be one of you three, and you knew Simon was already with the guys. So if nothing else, you burned it.
I disagree. I was going to say the one thing you said he saw it coming. Liz and Jordy were still highly convinced that Simon was still working with them as a villains 3. Obviously, maybe that's something that we didn't really see off camera. Maybe they kept talking a lot because to us, it was obvious that he had joined up with the guys, but Jordy and Liz still believed they were 3 strong. Tegwith, are you with Abraham?
Hold on.
Abraham's like, no, let me go back.
Once you pull that idol out, it's a wrap. You pulled it out and you made a demand. Say, hey, look, we need y'all to vote our way. Once you do that, you got to play the idol. There's no going back for it.
I mean, Abraham, all they needed was Simon to go with them, and it would have worked. They would have, if I think of the numbers correctly, it would have
help me out, Ted, because if he was in his own tribe, that would have worked. But he was in somebody else's tribe.
Yeah, well, I think it's really like my thing is if I ever go on Survivor or whenever anyone's on Survivor, I think the thing you have to remember is in life, no matter how smart you think you are, you should always imagine that you should always play and always live like there is somebody who is smarter than you are. And I think a lot of times on Survivor, like Jordy, you just gotta get to the next vote. Like that's what you do on Survivor. Just get to the next vote. And I know I get the temptation of wanting to hold on to it. I personally, the moment he was like, but what if, I went, no.
Overthinking the game.
Because yes, exactly. And it's, in my opinion, there was a strong arming of, who was it? I think it was Nina and Haley.
Haley.
Where Jordy literally said, like, if you don't do this, like I might have to be one of you. And I think when you kind of threaten somebody like that, you're going to be like, well, now I really don't want to do it. You know what I mean? And they're going to try to figure out a way for that not to happen. And so I think if you threaten somebody in such a way, because they threatened them. They were like, look at this, like, I've got this. And if you go wrong, I will use it against you. And so really, it hurt me so much because I love Jordy and I love the way he approaches the game. I love that he treats it like a game. And, even though he had it around his neck when he left, he was laughing and he was like, man, but it just was like, I think he had to really think like, if I think I'm smart, there's probably somebody who was smarter than me. So just do the original plan. I've always said, if you have an idol, don't share it. Like, don't tell, you tell Haley and Nina, obviously they're going to tell everybody. Like they're not in your alliance. So you have to
they're in your tribe.
Exactly. So I was just so upset. I mean, obviously no one is more upset than probably Jordy. But man, I just think that it was played not right.
Poor game move, but I do have to add on. I agree with everything that's being said. I think he should have just played it. I definitely land on the side of, if you have an idol, I think people try to hold on to it way too long. I agree with the statement you said, Tegwith, where it's like, just get to the next vote. If you have a guaranteed shot to get to the next vote, especially when you're in a minority, forget Simon, forget Liz, forget all the heroes. You are just, look at the numbers. It's whatever it is, 6-3, 7-3, whatever the numbers are. I mean, you have a guaranteed, pass to the next day. So I do agree with all that, but sometimes you gotta make those big moves. And, for everyone, none of us are obviously hitting up Jordy and being like, oh, you're so stupid and stuff like that. But I always laugh at it because he did say that he had a lot of people message him and say that was just a terrible decision. If it went the other direction and Simon stayed with Liz and Jordy, we would be looking at this right now as move of the week. Jordy is probably player of the week. He's turned the numbers in his favor. So it's that fine line of, do you make that huge move or do you just go the boring option?
So hindsight is always 20/20,
I mean, but you could have replayed the idol like this and say, okay, they could have said, hey, we do have an idol. Liz has one, and showed that one idol and said, hey, we want y'all to vote with us. We got one idol. It still would have made Jordy the target, which you really want him to be the target, and say, okay, who do y'all want to vote with? And got them to give them a name and says, hey, we know we can say it's a person. If you had to vote somebody out, because Sam is starting to rock. He rocky because he got those votes the last tribal, and say, okay, who do y'all want me to vote? And vote Sam, and then say, okay, when the tribal came, who has an idol? He could have played it then. You still would have got the same results. You'd have got somebody out. They'd have never saw the second idol coming anyway. Liz could have kept her idol because she said she had it. And you got to play to the next. That's one thing that's consistent. If you have an idol and you feel like you're in some type of danger, you got to play it. Benjamin said, look, I know I'm going next. I'm playing this idol. I'm not playing with you. George, who played the idol for George? Shawnee.
Yeah, Shawnee.
Said, we got a bad feeling. Played it for George. And sure enough, if she hadn't played it for George would have been out now. So I would say for Australian Survivor and the way it's structured is always play your idol.
Now, Tegwood, did you have something to add there?
Well, I was just gonna totally agree with all of that. My one thing is I wish, and obviously I'm not on the island, I don't really know what was going on there, but from a viewer's perspective, this seems like a very tribe-oriented season where people are sharing idols, people are supporting each other, people are sharing secrets from across the tribe maps. They are villains, like the villains are sticking with the villains, obviously, other than Simon. The heroes are sticking with the heroes typically. There's always an exception to the rule. And so I don't know, from a viewer's perspective, to me, it's pretty clear that the tribe is staying like the tribe, like they're sticking with them. And so I just like, from a viewer's perspective, it just made total sense. The heroes were going to stick together no matter what. The amount of time it took for Nina and Haley to give up Sam's name, seemed like it took like a year and a half. Like it seemed like it took forever. And I think that should have been a red flag. That should have been a red flag that they didn't want to get rid of anybody. They didn't want to throw somebody's name out at all. And I think that really should have been a red flag. And, obviously, like I said, hindsight is 2020. It's super easy for us to talk about like what it should have been and what it shouldn't have been and how you should have done. But it's just hard because I loved Jordy so much and he's such good TV. And it was so hard to watch. It was like, it was just so hard to watch. And so, yeah.
He's the first returning player voted out.
He is.
First one this season. Yeah. And only, yes. And there was I keep mentioning his name, and we're going to chat a lot about him a little bit later in the show. But Simon was the key piece here, flipping on them and going. And you could tell how shocked they were. Their jaws dropped. They said, "Who?" It had to be Simon, and it was shocking to them. Anyone surprised that it was that shocking? Because on the island maybe, but I'm like, Jordy, you already gave all of his secrets away. So this should not be shocking. Liz, no one really gets along with you other than Shawnee and George. So it shouldn't be really shocking on your. I was shocked that they were so convinced that Simon was with them. Yeah,
especially since Jordy, I think at one point even said, while before the swap even happened, I think it was Jordy, he was like, the moment he gets over to the other beach, he's going to want to work with them. And so, I mean, Jordy even had that realization. So that was why it was even more shocking to me, because I honestly didn't even think of that until Jordy said it. And once Jordy said it, I was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. He would of course do that. So that's why I was even shocked, was because somebody literally said, he
called it all season long.
Yeah. And but Jordy's not a little guy. I mean, Jordy is just as big as they are. I don't understand the difference in, he's like, oh, these big guys. I'm like, you're just as big as they are. But I can understand how to build a relationship. And he was like, no, the competitiveness and everything else. But he forecast everything that was going to happen and then went the opposite way. It was like,
well, the thing for Jordy is, he said this in the interview we had with him, was that's not his game. He doesn't want to. He said there's a difference between, we brought up the fact that people have been using shields all season. And he says there's a difference between using someone as a shield and using someone as like a guard to hide behind. And he said Simon getting with the big guys is basically using them to hide behind those bigger dudes. Whereas someone like George, or less George, more Shawnee, is using George as like she's manipulating the decisions that they make and actually using him as like a bigger target and not hiding behind him. So it was very insightful. Let's talk about the flip side of this, right? Because we have kind of seen this downfall of the hero strong going on for a couple weeks now. I think back to I think it started kind of when they sent Jerry over, and that kind of turned Jerry to the dark side in a sense. And now Jerry looks rougher every single episode, and I'm like, he looks more and more like a villain every single episode. He looks like George's like little henchman. And then it went on to when Paige got voted out, and they were so shocked by that. And a little more in this latest episode when everyone found out the idol was fake, but we've kind of seen this downfall of Hero Strong, and they lost Sam here. This was kind of an awakening for Sam and saying, whoa, okay, I am not good being on the bottom of this Heroes Alliance. And this causes more people to kind of break out as well. Nina and David were two people all season that we weren't hearing anything from. David had not had one confessional all season.
None.
He just had his first one. Congratulations, David. He just had his first confessional in episode 12. Nina, we started hearing a little bit more from Nina. Found out those two are actually best friends, which is something we haven't seen all season long. They bring in Sam now, who feels like he's at the bottom. And then they turn around and bring in Liz, the one like true villain on the tribe who is on the outs. They just go, hey, you want to work with us? And now they're starting to notice that Sean and Haley are kind of the king and queen of the Heroes tribe. So it's interesting that this dynamic is starting to form where this week, how I saw it, the villains are getting closer together, able to pull in some pieces, and the heroes are starting to fold in on one another. We also saw this with George kind of sitting back and saying, I am feeling super comfortable on this tribe. And you have Flick, Ben, and Maddie all going to him, and this is what I offer. We had two people say I can be double agents, and I love George's confessional where he's like, Maddie's over here promising the same thing that Flick just promised me, and like they're basically begging for their lives in the game. I'd love to hear you guys' opinions on this, if anything stands out to you in particular, but it's kind of interesting to me seeing these tribe dynamics switch to where this has been a heroes-dominated game, but we're going in the merge week, and I am fully confident that the villains are in a better spot than the heroes at the moment.
I'm gonna say that we don't really know now who's a hero, who's a villain. It's starting to be blurred between that. We just got survivor players, and everybody's trying to position themselves to get to the win, to get to be the sole survivors. So the title of hero and villains, I think once they started to merge the tribes, it got dropped off because now you got Flick, you got Matt. And Ben, before he got voted out, they're playing for their survivor lives, making decisions. And George is saying, hey, Flick, if you throw the idol in the fire, we're going to go ahead and save you. Now, not knowing that Simon gave her the clue to what was to an immunity idol, not a real immunity idol, which backfired because on the next thing, George took advantage of that and said, oh, they gave you a fake idol so they could get you voted out. So it's just so much gameplay of survival now, except for you don't hear anything from George except for I'm just going to obliterate the whole tribe. And Gary, you don't hear anything from now except okay,
Jerry,
where am I going to vote at? Jerry, where am I going to vote at? Now Stevie is a wild card. Stevie will keep you up in the middle of the night on the island because you don't know exactly. His editing for chaos is outstanding. Whoever edited Stevie is doing a great job because you have no idea until tribal who's going to vote for.
Teguis, shed some light on the situation. Who's running this game at this current moment? Because in my eyes, it's kind of Abraham saying it's getting blurred. Everyone's kind of finding their groove in the game. We're not doing this whole tribal alliance thing. But then you just said, you can still tell it's kind of tribe strong. So where are all these players at heading into this merge week?
Well, my approach to Survivor, to honestly sports even, is like, if I'm a big baseball fan, and if somebody is leading in the beginning of the game, like for the first 3 or 4 innings, they've got like 4 or 5 runs under their belt, I think that team is losing. I think people get cocky. I think people who have the lead early on can feel like they can sit on their laurels and like be like, yeah, we've got this in the bag. And I feel like I see this a lot on Survivor. So I feel like I just feel like you see them kind of eating at each other before they need to when the tribe just keeps winning. Whereas on the flip side, if a tribe is forced to, whittle it down to 3 players or to, whatever it is, I think that is a bond that's sometimes pretty difficult to break. Now, obviously, that's not true all of the time, but I really think that most of these villains, have a bond that is so maybe not like the tightest because it is Survivor, but just so much tighter than the heroes because the heroes didn't really have to do a lot of infighting. How many heroes have
No,
been voted out? Two,
Yeah.
two this whole time.
they've
They
been
had to vote
dominant.
for Jerry again. Oh man, if I were Jerry, I would be burning things. If I would go and I would be like,
I would be a
excuse
villain.
me, if I see my name written down one more time, I'm gonna
He's
sleep
getting a
with one eye
villain arc
open.
right now. Like every time he's with George, like George is talking to someone, he's right there. That's why I say
Good
he's
for
like his
him.
henchman. He's right there, and you always see him laugh, like, like
Good for him.
he's fitting right in.
I got so mad for him at what was that, the Ben vote where he got
Yes,
some votes, and I went, "Can we stop just throwing votes on Jerry, please?
it was
That's so rude."
he's the split vote king. Anytime
Oh
they
my
need to
God.
split votes, they say let's split it between this person and Jerry.
I'm so over it. If I were Jerry, I'd be like, literally, guys, one more time. I swear, do it. I swear, do
I'll
it.
throw you
But
in the fire.
exactly,
I
that's what
thought
I would do if I were Jerry.
because I thought Simon was on the way out, and I was like, how is he surviving? But let's go back. Let's go back to the previous episodes where Haley was just trying to survive the first boot. Now she's a mastermind in the game because he's
I
like,
still
listen,
don't know. I still don't know if she's as mastermind. I don't know what word I'm trying to get. I don't know if she's as much of a mastermind as it's painting her at the moment, because I'm convinced that Haley is still hero strong, and you're starting to see these cracks form. Like
Yeah.
Nina and David they're kind of doing this. Nina said it. She's like, eventually you can become a villain, and it's starting to feel kind of good. And I don't even think Haley realizes at the moment. I think her and Sean are just at the top of the mountain, and they think everybody is following along.
so
Do you
who?
think
So
that she would have gone home in this
yeah,
past episode had the twist not happened? Do you think it would have been Haley?
I do think she would have been gone.
I would love to hear from, like, at some point when we talk to Nina once she's won, because we're not going to get an exit interview with her because
Yeah.
she's going to win. So when she's won, I would love to hear, whether or not that was actually in the cards. Because sometimes the edit can like play with you. I would love to hear her 2 cents on that.
now there's only 2 tribes in Australian Survivor, but there are 3 factions going into the merge. You got Nina, Sam, and Matt, because we don't hear anything. No, not Matt.
No, Liz
David.
and
David. No. That's a strong 3.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
It's
strong
a
3,
strong
because
3.
I did think that. I'm like, why are they trusting Liz? Liz is going to
Mhm.
go right back with Shawnee and George the moment she can. So I don't
Oh,
know why
Liz
I
jump
have
ship.
no idea why they were trusting her in the first place. I'd love to hear that, is
Mhm.
The
why
Spice
you would
Girls.
even trust her in the first place. But yeah, that's beside the point.
You
Yes.
got George and his group, and the Spice Girls, and I don't know why they got Jerry as a geriatric Spice Girl, but I don't know. And Stevie Spice. And then you got Sean with his group.
His
So
media alliance, in a sense, yeah.
so who's left out?
There's a couple key wild cards here. I think Maddie
Flick.
could be looked as a Flick. Maddie, I think at this point are wild cards in the game. I also think
Simon.
that actually, what'd you say?
Probably Simon.
Simon, yes.
Simon.
Yeah,
Or do
I
you
knew
Simon's
think-
there
he's
was
a
one
throwaway.
other.
Or do you think Simon is tied to Sean now? Like, from Simon's perspective, do you think Simon is like, I will do what Sean does? Not from Sean's perspective.
So
Like, do you
let's
think
talk.
Simon's tight with Sean?
I think we're going to answer this, and I wanted to go ahead. We're going to go back to the Ben tribal in a couple of minutes, but let's talk about this last tribal, because going on that comment that you just made, it was immunity. It was a non-elimination episode, and basically JLP laid it out where you all are going to go vote with a chance to go to the heroes tribe, the new heroes tribe. If you don't want to go over to that tribe, don't write your name down. If you do want to go over there, write your name down. If multiple people write their names down, then we're going to draw rocks. If nobody writes their names down, then we're going to draw rocks and someone's going to get stuck over there. So I think we all expected Liz to write her name down. That was not shocking whatsoever. But what was shocking is I think Simon not writing his name down.
Sean was whispering to him to write his name down.
Yeah, I adding that and the fact that if you're Simon at this point in the game, right, and you are a lone wolf, nobody wants anything to do with you in this game. You have been, George continues to just make you look like a fool in this game. If you look at who's on the heroes tribe and you look at who's on the current villains tribe, you know you just burnt everyone on the villains. Now, obviously, you can look over at the heroes. Maddie's not going to want to work with you. Flick's not going to want to work with you. None of the Spice Girls. Stevie, at this point,
Stevie
is the only. I think Stevie would come back.
I think when Stevie sees a clear-cut opportunity to vote George out, that's when we're going to lose Stevie. But it's too many players still left in the game. And here's the thing about it is, if Simon goes back, he has no allies on either side. So you got Flick waiting for you to say, okay, you know what? He's a disposable player. So either side, you saying, hey, we don't need him over on the villains tribe. So who's going to play with him? Because he would have been voted out anyway if they weren't trying to get Haley out. So Simon is the verse. If the merge happens, he would be my first player to go out. Because nobody would be concerned. Yeah, Simon wouldn't be a concern to anybody.
Well,
and Simon dug that own hole. He dug his own hole by not going intentionally out of George too early in the game. He should have waited and said, hey, if I make it to merge, I'm going after George at merge. But he's going after George on day one, and George has been killing him.
Tag with you had something to add?
Yeah, well, I actually kind of wasn't shocked that Simon didn't write his name down, mainly because when you look at the biggest foe, I guess, on the heroes versus the villains, right now, the biggest foe for Simon on the heroes is George. And that is somebody who he has been butting heads with since day one. He's actively gotten into fights with him. George has called him said that he wasn't intelligent, said all these things to him. They've gotten into like actual fights versus on the villains, the biggest quote unquote foe on the villains for him, I guess, would be Sean. And Simon did say that he thinks that Sean will hold his end of the bargain, that he swore on his kids, whereas Sean, said in his confessional, that's like null and void to me because he thought that he lied. Simon lied. But then also in another episode, Simon, there are too many S names. Simon did say that Sean was a survivor idol of his. And so I think as a big Survivor fan that Simon is, he would rather try to work with somebody who he actively liked watching on television and he idolized versus someone that he has been butting heads with for the past, 28 days. And so that's kind of why I wasn't shocked they didn't write his name down. And even with Sean whispering in his ear, like, oh, you should do it. I really feel like if I were Simon, I would feel like I could turn Sean, whereas working with George, that's long gone. That is a long gone, fever dream that he won't ever be able to attain.
It is not going to end well, this rivalry between George and Simon, because like you said, we continue to see it. They've been in multiple arguments. I mean, we saw in this latest episode when everyone found out that the cookie idol was not an actual idol. And George is just continuing to interrogate him to the point where Simon's like, I have no idea what's happening. And George literally, and I quote, well, I think we can all see that, Simon.
Yeah.
It's like, and then you had the reward challenge where I think this is a perfect example. Now, I'm sure the edit really played up to it, and I'll explain that in a second. But this is a perfect example of the different ways that these two are perceived in the game at the moment. George takes his ring, chucks it, and everyone's laughing about it. Simon then repays the favor, chucks it, and we see multiple people who kind of roll their eyes and
they don't play dirty. Somebody said don't play dirty.
Yeah, don't play dirty. Liz rolls her eyes. And that was really interesting. And that's something that, no offense to casual fans, but that's something you might not pick up on if you're not like us and we're looking at every little thing, diehard fans. But I thought that was really interesting. That just shows you the two different perspectives at the moment. They can do literally the exact same thing, but when George does it, everyone thinks it's hilarious. When Simon does it, something's wrong with it. He shouldn't be doing that. And that's really interesting to me.
You know what? But Simon has created that whole situation himself. George, I mean, it's almost like they got together and George said, "Hey, I need you to say all this stuff here, and then when the show starts, I'm going to come back and say all this stuff here because it looks like it all fits together." Every time Simon says something on the mat, it just looks like George is already ready for his response to it. And with the actual challenge, you got Simon so much more bigger than George. It makes it almost like George is a little kid compared to him physically. Why would you need to throw his ring back? Now, George throwing his ring.
Stevie did win without his glasses. So I don't think that.
Thank you for saying that. That was in my mind. I said, as soon as Abe stops talking here, I'm throwing out the fact that Stevie beat Liz. But anyways,
let me just say that.
Stevie didn't have glasses. So Stevie was full speed ahead. And let's think about it is, those relationships in the game either can play to help you or play to hurt you. And right now, Simon has just got so many bad relationships going on that he's got to be able to survive these next couple of votes. If he can survive these next couple of votes, Simon's good. But if he can't survive these next couple of votes, because now everybody can be an ally of somebody else on the merge, because now everybody's the same.
And just to remind everyone, we haven't hit the merge yet. We still have probably at least 1 or 2 more episodes until we hit the merge. Did anyone else feel that people were being a little bit too hard on Simon? And right after we talk about this, we'll go back to that Ben vote out where everyone kind of realized it was a fake idol. But I mean, I don't know what else Simon could have done here. He said, I thought it was an idol. It had a green emerald on it. I thought it was not. I'm sorry. I'm just as confused as everybody else. And yet everyone was so fast to be, Sam did put out, we understand it, bro. Like, I didn't see it. I would have probably thought it was an idol. I probably would have done the exact same thing. But besides that one moment, by how they're editing it, and they're doing a great job if they're trying to paint Simon as this down and out, sad puppy. But I just thought everyone was a little too hard on the guy. Like, come on, who would not have thought that's an idol? I think we all would have jumped or thought it was something. So I wanted to get your guys' opinions on that.
Ben knew it wasn't an idol.
Ben did.
That is true.
Hey, look, if Flick had showed it to Ben would have said, no, this is the clue to an idol. Because no, I don't blame Simon for finding something that's so unique in a cookie jar and say, you know what? This is an idol. Because we're used to an idol having a jewel in it, being some kind of, interesting thing. Nobody would have tied the two together but Ben, I don't know how Ben even tied his together. It was like, oh, this is a clue to an idol. You know how many people wouldn't find an idol? And everybody that found an idol didn't find it because of that clue. So only one person found an idol because of that clue.
Yeah, can I just say, I don't think that was like, I don't know. I feel like that clue could have been different. I
thought it was a really weird twist.
If I'm in like the jungle and I walk across a coconut like Shawnee did that has a big jewel on it, I don't think I need a clue to tell me that is something important. In the game.
I was kind of let down when they kept building up. We're gonna find out what it is.
Yeah.
And I already knew it was a clue because we already saw Ben find it, obviously, and that led him to the idol. It was just a major letdown to me. Like I thought it could have been so much cooler if I like the no instructions idea, but I think it would have been cooler if you played it as an idol and it was something else. Say like, this is not an idol, but you can send 2 people home. That also eliminates their votes. Their votes will not count tonight. Something like that. Something like a
Ryan had an idea like that where it was like, it's the like a not knowledge without power, but like safety without power. So you play it and like your vote then is null and void and you have to leave, but you're safe or something. Ryan had that idea too.
See, that would have been very interesting, much more interesting than, well, this is just an unmarked clue.
Yeah.
Here's what's crazy. They don't clear the path for the idols. Whoever hides the idols, they just drop it where it's at. They don't move spider webs out the way. They don't remove ants. I was in the rocks. I was looking in the rocks for an idol. I was in the jungle, and I'm talking about you don't know what's on these spider webs. I'm in Fiji. I don't know what might have bit me in there because I'm trying to look for an idol. So I don't need no clue. I need the idol. Keep the clue.
Spoiler alert to anyone who didn't watch 41. He did not find the idol.
No. But hey, inside track, they film you no matter where you at.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the actual like Ben elimination here and everything leading up to it. So obviously they're all trying to decide. And when I say all, the Spice Girls are trying to decide who they're going to send home. They know this idol is in play. George actually calls out Flick for it. She's like, I do have this idol. I am going to play it tonight. So they're trying to figure out who to stack the votes on. We obviously see Flick and Maddie and Ben all try to convince Stevie to join them in voting out King George and making that move for King George, which I'm a little shocked Stevie didn't. My concern with Stevie is we've talked about it this season where they kind of, or at least I talked about it with Tanya when she came on week 1. They talked down to Stevie and it really bugs me. And it was obvious this episode when he was trying to pitch his idea. He's like, look, what if we split the votes? And I understand. I agree with them, Stevie. We can't split the votes. I get that. It's the way they were speaking with him and almost being like he's a child. Mm-hmm. Like, and they're laughing about it. They're like, no, Stevie, we can't. And then they look at each other and they laugh. And it's just obvious to me that I wish Stevie saw that he is by far at the bottom of that alliance. And I think it would be beneficial for his game to make that switch over. I know, Abe, you're going to say he's waiting for the right opportunity to strike. But it infuriates me. But what I'm getting to is we then see Flick play it for Maddie, then finds out that it's not an idol. Everyone is shocked. And then Ben ends up going home. Did they make the right decision to send Ben home over a Flick or a Maddie? I know that's a question that it's like, who knows? But they were trying to decide who to keep. Maybe they can end up working with them.
I think it was the right decision. Mainly because I don't know. I think we saw what Ben can do, and did. And, you know, it was, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure Jerry was the one who threw out Ben's name first, and they all were like, okay, fine, that works. But Jerry, did Jerry see that? No, or was he swapped? I can't remember. No, was Jerry at that tribal when Ben threw? Yes, he was, because Sharni was the one. So he saw what Ben can do. He saw how he can kind of talk his way into people, you know, moving their votes. And so personally, I think Ben is a really great player. I think Ben has the ability to maneuver. And so I think that is the right thing to do. Did I see Ben as more of someone who I was shocked didn't join the villains immediately?
I agree. Yeah.
But he didn't, that was a choice that I think that was a mistake on his part at the very beginning. I think he should have joined with the villains right away. And then obviously it would have been the wrong decision because then he would have been in the Spice Girls Alliance. But, you know, that was a decision he needed to have made 2 votes earlier or a vote earlier. So I think it was the right decision because I do think he had the best potential going forward. I think in the individual game, I think he would have been really a one to watch.
We talking to Ben in his exit interview. Ben, if it wasn't for King George having the tribal council before we'd have been looking at his tribal council as 101 on how to go to tribal council for Survivor and how to manipulate the tribe to vote for somebody else at tribal council. So I'm gonna agree with Ted. I believe that Ben is the most dangerous player that they had at that time. I don't think the reason, but you already said somebody's friend home, and people get emotional out there. So, and that's why he got called a snake in the grass on the way out. So Gary called him a snake in the grass on the way out. So giving him a vote wasn't going to be hard at all. I just think that if he'd have survived that, he just is a better player. And I think that if he'd had better alliances, we would have seen him going far in the game as well. But Flick and Matt.
Yeah, where does this leave them now? I mean, we literally saw Ben get an offer kind of at the beginning, you know, come join us. George is offering all these deals. Come be our 6th person. At one point in these episodes, Shaunie said, I don't know what Stevie's thinking. let me just go grab a crab from the beach to be our 5th Spice Girl member. But basically, in this latest episode, we saw another proposition offered to Maddie, where George said, come be our 6th member, and we will have the numbers when we get to the merge. Did Maddie make the mistake here by saying, I need to see the overall landscape of the game before making any decisions? Because George basically said in a confessional, I don't have time to dilly-dally. I don't have time for you to look at the game. I need a yes or no right now. And obviously, Maddie didn't give him that answer. So, I mean, asking you guys, if you're in this position, you're out there right now, you see kind of how the game's going. Do you join up with King George? Because, I mean, it's hard to say no when this man's just making everyone look like, I keep saying it, he's playing chess while they're playing checkers.
I'm not throwing my idol in the fire. I can tell you that right now. That's not going to happen.
I don't think anyone would. That's why when Shawnee was like, oh, I would definitely throw my idol in the fire, I shook my head no. I'm like, no one would throw their idol.
When you're in no threat, you can say that. But Flick is in a situation where she wasn't the target, but you still didn't play it for Ben. You played it for Matt. So they gave a clear-cut signal that you're concerned about saving Matt and not Ben anyway. So even if he had survived that vote, he should have known, hey, you still are not in this tribe as a hero. Go to the villains and see what they got going on. It's going to be interesting when we do finally get to merge to see where everybody pairs up at. Because right now, George has his Spice Girl. He has his group. You're right. Stevie going to be the wild card. But we've also seen where when you erratic in the game of Survivor, you become the vote out because nobody knows what you're going to do or how you're going to do it. And like I said before, great editing for Stevie to say, until he was at Tribal and he stated, I'm going to go with the current or whatever he said like that on this. He had already said, I'm voting with George now. So you should have known it was coming. So it was crazy, but his edit shows that I don't know who he's voting for.
So Tegwith, I mean, where's Flick and Maddie in this game right now?
Yeah, if I'm Matt, and somebody comes, or if I'm anyone, somebody comes up and gives you a proposition, you say yes and. Yes,
That's great acting. This is an actress. She knows her way around.
Absolutely. One of my things that I always remember is Erica said she took improv classes to prepare for Survivor 41. And the number one rule in improv is that when you're on stage with somebody, you say yes and to build on what they're saying. And so if in Survivor somebody comes to you and it's like, hey, I've got this plan, or hey, I've got this thing, you say yes and then think about it later, because you don't want to seem like somebody. And I think that this is what Maddie, you can't, like, obviously you've got to walk that fine line. It's not all like it's not never black and white, but if you are seen as somebody who's wishy-washy in making decisions, that really can bite you. And I think that it bit Maddie. Because here's the thing I remember when they were doing the auction is they said, Maddie's a really great guy. Yeah, he paused. And they kept saying, Maddie's a really great guy. He's a really good person. And sometimes, I think good people who go into the game wanting to be, quote, heroes and, quote, good people, they don't want to lie to somebody's face and say, yes, I want to do this. But, if you want to make sure that you're not on the outs, sometimes you just got to say yes and. Sometimes you just got to roll with those punches and figure out. You just got to figure out what your next step is. And I feel like the hesitation on Maddie's part maybe can come back to bite him. And I'm nervous about that because, we haven't heard a lot from him, but I do like him on the screen. I think he's kind of a calming presence for me on the screen. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's his face or his aura.
Everyone else is way too chaotic.
It's like nice to see Maddie, so I hope he stays. But I'm just a little nervous.
Even with Terry, like you said, Maddie learned how to play the game because George says, hey, look, you can come with us. You're not a target. And he was like, oh man, let me think about that.
Nope. George does not move at that speed.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is there to think about? We'll go back to the same philosophy. Survive to the next vote. Mm-hmm. Can I survive to the next vote? Will this get me to the next vote? Because he was like, oh, let me think about it. Well, you're not gonna make it to the next vote.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw a question for you guys. Who had, and this is gonna get us talking on a few of these players this week. Who had the better week as a whole? Liz, George, or is it still Shawnee who's kind of controlling this game? Tegwith, I'll go to you first.
I think it's still Shawnee. I mean, Liz still has an idol. That's really great. But like, and I think that the thing that, happened for Shawnee is she gave Jordy an idol
She
and it
lost
went,
an idol.
she
Yeah.
lost an idol because it went out, and that stinks. But I don't know. I think that George is still a bigger target than her. She's using him as a shield still. I think that's still good. Liz still sees Shawnee as her number one, even though she has like this other relationship going on. I think that Shawnee right now is in a very good position to go really far. I think she's learned the game. It's her third time playing, and I just think out of those three, like she is in my opinion the best position to go for. Now, let me just say, I do like that Liz is making relationships with other people. Those other three people being David,
Nina
Nina,
Sam.
and yeah. So I do like that. But that being said, I just feel like Shawnee is still in that pivotal role and is still the one that everyone wants to partner with, but is never the target.
I just noticed that I offered you guys the Spice Girls. I should have just said who out of the Spice Girls had the better week. Abraham, go ahead.
I think that Shawnee is in the best position, but I think Liz is going to be one voted out by the Spice Girls. And here's the reason why. I think that Shawnee understands that she has to keep George there as long as possible. Let him do all the destruction. And then when you get down to the final 5 or the final 6, you got to take him out between there because you don't want him in the final 3. But I think Liz is going to look at that like, I want to take him out early, and it's going to be too early. Like if they merge next time, George shouldn't be the target. You still have too many players. You got too many players in the game.
Abraham. We've been doing this long enough. My dude, we disagree again. I think if Liz decides that she wants to break off from the Spice Girls alliance, you're asking a lot for Shawnee to leave her girl Liz out. I think those two are like this. And I think if one of them says, let's cut George loose, the other one will follow.
No, I mean, here's the thing about
my concern with that is if George finds out, he's got Jerry in his back pocket, which I think could be a really interesting story. Let's say we get late in the season, the Spice Girls alliance stays together. Let's say let's just put it out there in the universe. You get to the final 6, and your final 6 is Liz, Shawnee, George, Jerry, Stevie, and Haley.
Oh.
And you're asking,
that's never going to happen.
And you decide to go at it. So you've got Jerry and George, you've got Shawnee and Liz, and then you've got Jerry and Haley possibly doing a split vote if Haley decides to go. I'm just putting it out there. That could happen because all those players besides Haley ultimately are going to be in the majority heading into the merge. And we could see the Spice Girls, if they want to, run this game until the final 6 or the final 5, and then I think you would have to cut George loose.
Yeah, I mean, it's a play that can't happen until you cut at least another 4 players out. You got too many players left in there to start cutting the people that's actually making things happen. And if you're right, if Shawnee cuts George on the very first vote on the merge, guess what? Everybody looking at her now. Now, what are you going to do? Well, it's only you and Liz, really, because George was actually the mastermind behind everything. So do you lose Stevie? And now who do you pick up for the Spice Girl when y'all actually do the merge? Who's coming with you? Is Nina coming with you?
I still think they could get Haley. We've seen George communicate with Haley all season.
Yeah, so if you bring a Haley over, now George is still going to be looking like he's the mastermind. Everybody know that George has to go at some time. They just don't know at what time. That's all.
I think if I'm Shawnee, part of me would want to keep Simon in only for the reason that you can't take George that much further. Because I think if George makes it to the end, people will be very impressed that he, was able to fight and claw his way to the end. And I could potentially see him, if he makes it to the final, tribal council, I could potentially see him winning. And so part of me is like, if I'm Shawnee, do I keep Simon in just for the sole purpose that there is somebody out there who wants to get George out more than you do? Because you can't take him that far. And so if if it ever becomes a thing where you're all of a sudden you're like, you know what, it's time for me to cut George. Do you keep Simon so that Simon can be the face of the getting out George, vote, and then you cut Simon after that, just so that you're not the one who got King George? Because sometimes if you're the Kingslayer or the Queenslayer, you have a big target on your back. Obviously, a lot of things would have to fall into a place perfectly for something like that to happen, but I could see a way for that to actually help Shawnee out in the long run, just so that you're not the one turning on your number one alliance and you have somebody to blame it on.
I mean, if they're smart about it, and this is something that I'm shocked we don't see more in kind of the new era of Survivor, and I'm shocked we don't see more of this season. We saw this last episode. Everyone wants Simon out to the point, and I'm going to get to this point in a second. They threw a challenge to get Simon out of the game. Why are we trying so hard to get Simon out? He's got nobody. That is as easy as a number that you can get. You go to Simon, you lay it on the table, you say, there is nobody in this game that will work with you. There is not one person. He knows that. He says he's feeling down. He might still think he has Sean. Yes, but he's feeling super down and out of it. Go to him, lay it all out there and say, work with me.
Because in Survivor, you have tunnel vision. You don't have nothing else to do to think about it.
If you don't work with me, you will not make it 3 more days in this game. It blows my mind that people aren't going to Simon and saying, come with me.
Let me ask a question, and this just popped in my head. Is King George the Russell Hantz of Australia?
I saw someone bring this up.
I think Russell Hantz is the Russell Hantz of Australia.
Oh no, he got voted out immediately in Australia. They was like, oh, you got to go.
I think King George is way better than Russell is.
I think King George is the Boston Rob of Australia. The villain that you want to root for, the one who, kind of says snarky things behind people's back, but has pretty good gameplay and is good with his words and is good at convincing. Like, I don't know. I feel like he's such a big prominent player that I see him more of a Boston Rob.
I would say I'm very big into the numbers today. Like in our season 44 preview, I said that Josh could become, you could have an argument for top 10 player of all time, but I'm going to put out another crazy thing that's going to make a lot of Survivor fans go, are you kidding me? And log off probably. I think King George, I think there is the argument, in my opinion, that King George could be a top 5 strategic Survivor player of all time. Oh, yeah. I mean, this guy is, it's week after week, and this is coming. I have not seen his first season, right? So I don't know exactly, but I know he does very well. That's how he got the name King George and stuff, and I know he made it very far in the game. But every single episode, I keep thinking this is going to catch up to him. And every single episode, he just continues to kind of strong arm people in doing whatever he wants. Like every week, I feel like it's like watching Star Wars and seeing someone go from a Jedi to a Sith. Every week, this man is able to Palpatine someone into getting into his alliance. And it blows my mind. I'm like, what are we doing, people? Are we all just following in King George's line straight to the finish line? Like, King I George don't get it.
King George is giving out a master's class
be that
playing Survivor. Here's a funny thing. He is a likable guy. When I met him for the first time, I was like, who is this guy? I didn't know he was King George or anything. But when I met him, he is the socialist guy. He was like, hey, man, how you doing? Who's this guy? He's like, I'm your roommate. I was like, oh, okay, you know the guy in the room. But he draws you in, and we had a blast. I mean, he's just that type of guy. So he's very sociable, has a sociable game. What I didn't see was how he played the game of Survivor. Matter of fact, today, I actually went back and looked at clips of his first time playing. And it's a couple of people, Flick, Haley, that were on that trial with them, they're going to be gunning for him once the merge happens. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see who comes together from the previous relationships he had.
Well, because you brought up Haley, thank you that's the perfect. I've had this question. So obviously we've seen George and Haley, talk a good amount. Haley was like, trust Jerry. George was like, go look for an idol in the roots of the trees. Like things like that we have seen, right? one of the last things we saw in episode 12 was when Liz went over, she was hugging Nina, or her and Nina were talking, and Nina was like, be careful who you tell. Be careful, who you tell about this thing, right? Do you think that if Liz goes over there and tells the Spice Girls about the plan to get out Haley, it could come back and bite Nina and Sam and David in the butt? Because I could totally see that happening, because I think that, and I'm not alone in thinking this, I'm pretty sure that George and Haley are much closer than everyone else
Yes.
thinks that they are.
Yes.
You don't just go and whisper, you find an idol in the roots of the trees to just anybody. You have, I feel like you have to have a reason to do that. And I really am low key worried for Nina specifically, because she's my winner pick. That this could come back to her, because I think it was a great plan. We've said it before in this episode, really great plan. Solid. We do think it was going to happen, right? I'm worried that I really hope that they talked about this beforehand. So, long question: do you think this could come back to bite some people?
I do. In answering another question you kind of had there, in the whole Haley and George relationship that we kind of see, I think Haley would be down to take George to the end again. I think Haley has this mindset that she beat George once, she can do it again. And I think she would have that story. Look, I am a winner of this game who just made it to the end again. Mm-hmm. We've seen it with Sandra. It's a very compelling argument to you just won a season, you made it to the end. So that's why when people keep saying, Abraham, I know you alluded to it, that when Haley joins up with George, she's going to be looking to get him out. I don't think so. I think if Haley and George get together, that's a combination you don't want in this game, because I think Haley would have no problem taking George to the end with him. I think if anyone has a problem with it, it's probably George. But I don't see Haley really caring about it. She's like, I've already beat him before. Yes, I do see it coming back to bite someone. Because what I think is going to happen is, we kind of saw this preview for next week where Liz says George is starting to boss people around, and it's starting to get annoying. And I think what's going to happen, this is just my, what's the word I'm looking for? My prediction is, my theory in a sense, is I think Liz is going to tell them, and George is going to start throwing out, well, we got to get this person out, got to get this person out. We got to maybe throw another challenge or something like that. And I think that's going to set her off, because we hear her say, she is making these relationships with other people. And I'm very interested in this game to see who Liz goes with, whether she decides to go with this new group that she forms, or if she stays with the Spice Girls.
Well, you got merge and you got pre-merge strategies. The pre-merge strategies is the 5 to get to merge. I think with Nina and David and Sam, once they merge, it's a whole new game, because now you have individual immunity. So there is no tribe immunity, and that individual immunity gonna keep people from getting voted out. So I'm interested to see how everybody start playing the game from the merge perspective. So now relationships are even more important. So I don't think that wanting to get Haley out for Nina, if we start to see it in the edits as the show gets on by, hey, what about Haley? Then we're going to see, but I don't think Nina's on the chopping block this early. I think there's a lot of other people on the chopping block before her. And I think she has David. I think she has Sam. So you got 3 votes right there. I think they can turn a couple other people. And Sean, they can probably take a Sean with them, and even a Simon. I think they have enough votes to keep from getting voted out. I just don't know who's going to be expendable on that very first merge vote off that very first challenge.
Let's talk about Nina for a little bit here. I know we talked about her just for a minute earlier. Your guys' winner pick still there. Mine's long gone, as usual.
Poor Sharney.
poor Sharney. But what I will say is, Nina was getting one of the purple edits this season. Her and David, we had not seen any of. And then they just throw it in our face this week. These two are actually super close in the game. We started hearing about it, I think, in the latest episode last week, but we really saw it this time. Those two are a very strong duo, like best friends. We also heard Nina say, when Jordy and Liz were kind of strong-arming them, who do you guys want it to be? The first thing that was said out of Haley and Nina's mouth, not David. And that was from Nina. She said, I do not want to go David. So that tells me those two are locked in, ready to go to the end together. which is interesting. So I want to hear, you guys obviously predicted Nina to win. What do we think of this alliance between David and Nina? And then you can go into this greater alliance of bringing Sam in, who fell on the outs of the heroes, and then trying to get Liz in as that like fourth member. It's very obvious they want that fourth member to be like a 4 strong.
I'm very interested. So number one, love Nina. I just wanted to say, I think we brought up her confessional about her saying like, I was a hero, now I'm playing like a villain. Before the season even started, and I mean this as a compliment, I was like, Nina's a villain. The only reason why Nina's a hero is because she got out on an injury. Nina was playing like a villain in Blood versus Water, as she should. And I was like the whole time like, Babe's a villain. Like I'm really excited to see this really interesting, fun gameplay from her. And I was shocked about her and David's relationship, like pretty much everyone else's. They are super tight, and I think it could be one of those things where they go to the very end and just maybe Nina has a little bit more of a pizzazzy gameplay. And so I could see that's why she wins, and that's why I'm right.
And then she will never live it down that her first cast assessment, she got it right off the bat.
They're like, hey, that was a good pick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it was very shocking that they decided to bring in Sam, because Sam is such a loyal player. Now, while I do think that's good in numbers, it just somehow doesn't align with how I see Nina playing the game. Not saying she's not loyal. I do think she is loyal, but I do think that she knows when to make the move that she needs to make. Not that she wants to make it, something that she needs to do. And I don't know that Sam does that or has that ability. And so I find that a very interesting third. Whereas I feel like Nina could work really, really well with somebody like Liz, could work really, really well with somebody like Shawnee. But I'm very interested how that I would like to have seen how that 3 was formed. And I'm really sad that we didn't get that.
Before you go, right, Abraham, I know you want to add to that, but I do want to throw out, I think that Nina already had a prior relationship with Sam, because she kept alluding to the fact when they had to vote for Sam, I got to patch this up with Sam. I got to figure out a way to patch this up with Sam. That's how I took it. She said that multiple times. So I was like, I wonder if she already didn't have a great relationship with Sam. And we know that Sam and David are like brothers in that group of meaty men. So that didn't shock me as much. Actually, now looking back on it, I wouldn't have been. I think what happened is David was so close to Sam, also so close with Nina, that David just probably told Nina, let's bring Sam in. Exactly. Yeah. So I would wager that's what happened there. Sorry to cut you off, Abe. I know you wanted to add on there.
Here's the thing about it is Nina doesn't have to convince Sam. David is already his number 1.
Yeah.
And as long as David co-signs for Nina, Nina's good to go. Now, do you have to do some what's that when you tear up something, you got to go back and do some patchwork? Because she did write his name down. And she already says, hey, I did want to write your name down. We were strong-armed to do it. So he saw the fact that it was 2 idols. So when you look back on it, you say, okay, Sean and them need to look over their shoulder and wonder, how many votes did Sam get in that tribal? He got 4. So that means that somebody had to cast the other 2 votes for him, or who cast the remaining votes for him. So he's already uneasy with the hero tribe. So he's easy to turn. So I say that's a solid 3 votes. Now, who's going to be 4? I don't think Liz is coming back. Liz is going to go with the Spice Girl, so she's going to be over there. But somebody else is going to join forces. I could see Matt joining forces with them and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and jump ship right now. And because if I was Nina, I'd be like, hey, George and Flick have a relationship from a previous gameplay. I would try to bring a Matt in, or
I see Flick. I see Flick more than Maddie.
Or Flick. But when you already have numbers, it's easier to say, okay, let's bring one more person in. But I don't think she has to do a lot of patchwork with Sam. I think Sam is already wanting to jump from the heroes tribe for the fact that not one time did he get votes. He was going to get, he got votes twice.
He was going to get votes the second time, but then he ended up, because it ended up being that switch, the swap.
But he knew he was going to get votes. They was like, oh, we're going to use you again. So he's just like Gary. They was like, hey, why we keep voting for
Jerry,
him?
yeah.
Derry. You're gonna keep voting for him. And that's the funny part. Sam really hadn't done anything except be a loyal player, and he was the one they threw the name out to get votes.
Wrong
So
place, wrong time. We've talked about it. Sometimes Survivor's just luck, and he just, for whatever reason, ended up being the bottom of the alliance. There's been a lot of themes this season that we've been seeing reoccur in terms of using people as shield, in terms of the amazing gameplay that's just strategic gameplay that's happening. But there are some negatives as well, and some things that I've started to notice that I'm like, okay, you don't see this in the US a lot, and it's starting to get a little, it's noticeable now. Throwing challenges is starting to become a habit. And we all know, we've talked about it before, where I am way against throwing a challenge. You could never convince me to throw a challenge. It just makes no sense. Like I said, if you really want to get someone out, you can get them out. Just wait. You will eventually go to tribal council and they can be your target. There's no reason to throw it. I also think it's a little disrespectful. I know this is like, gosh, Randy, stop going this deep into it, but it's a little disrespectful to the people who actually build these challenges and put time into making them. And we're not even going to try. This latest episode, they wanted Simon to get out, and they had that memory challenge, which, yes, it didn't take a lot of building, but it was very obvious that they were throwing it, to the point where if I was the host, I would have been like, yo, guys, come on, like, actually try or something. So where are we at right now with this? Earlier in the season, we were like, no, we can kind of understand it. If there's a player, we weren't necessarily for it, but we could kind of understand it. This is the second time that they've thrown a challenge now, or second or third time. Yeah, third time they've thrown a challenge. No,
because George and Shawnee were pretend pushing.
Oh, for the
yeah.
Oh yeah, in the blocks.
Third time, yeah, and that second time they threw a challenge this week. Now that I think about it, is it starting to be like too much? And this goes to what you said earlier, Teg, with the tribal alliances. They're very big in protecting the person on the other tribe. So I really hope this doesn't become the new norm in Survivor, kind of like the auction where it's like, how do you fix the challenges? Well, do you just stop doing swaps? Maybe I'm looking way too into it, but that's what I do when I have a whole page of notes here. I get really into the problems of the game. So I'll start with Teg with first, then go to Abraham here.
Well, I definitely am not for throwing a challenge. So for when Haley threw the challenge, I was really not like for that in that point in time. And I'm not that I'm saying I'm like all gung ho for throwing the challenge, but I understand it more now than I did when Haley threw it. Because, I think when Haley did it, it was pretty early in the game. Like the tribes were still each other's tribes. The heroes were going to go to tribal council at some point. The merge wasn't right around the corner. Like all of these things. I think it was the wrong thing to do. It worked out for her, and that's great. But I don't like when people throw challenges personally. I do understand it now, because now you see that the merge is right around the corner. You see that you don't know how many until the merge. You don't know, it could be the next one. It could be the one after that, and so because of that, I understand wanting to go in the merge with more numbers. So why don't we throw it so that our people over there can be safe? I do think that Australian Survivor has more of a tribe strong mentality than the US Survivor has. And that's not just because they started off with 2 tribes. I just think it's their the mentality that Australian Survivor has. And so I don't think this will become the norm. Sorry. My cat is right there. I don't think it'll become the norm. I do think it is getting a little tired, but I understand why they do it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Oh man, let me tell you something. You had to throw the challenge after George says, I'm going to get back. I'm going to pay you back for voting my player out. We knew the challenge was going to get thrown. We knew it was thrown. And we wanted to see who was going to get voted out. Can you make good on your promise that you just said it's a declaration of war? The build up to that, I'm with everybody else. I'm not throwing a challenge. I'm going out there competing every time. But once the declaration of war was presented, you wanted to see who was going to get voted out. And the only way to vote somebody out is we can't win this challenge. But to me, it was so obvious on both sides. It was like, okay, we're going to throw the challenge. Okay, well, we know you're going to throw the challenge. And we know why you're going to throw the challenge. I like George's the way he did their throwing a challenge because it was basically an epic saga of what was started at the mat for voting out the Joker. So you voted the Joker out. Okay, now we're gonna vote one of your players out. We have 3 over here. We're gonna vote them out. Nobody wanted to see them win and not vote anybody out. Be like, oh man, what happened? No, we want to see somebody get voted out. Now, when you wanted to vote out Simon, yeah, I didn't like that one at all. I mean, it was so just obvious that you wasn't really trying. Now, Randy, to the people that put those things together, they don't care about us.
I know they don't, but I care about them. I care about the time they.
I don't care about them either because when I did that challenge and I touched that stuff, I was like, what in the world were they doing? You couldn't have the sled alone seemed like it weighed 300 pounds. And you're just exhausted by the time you get to the sled and everything else. They have a blast doing it because they know they don't have to do it at real speed. They're just trying to make sure it's safe. They're trying to make sure it's safe for us. So when we go out there, but they're not trying to give it 100%. They're not hitting it hard. We're hitting it hard and it hurts. Randy, when you get on the show, I'm gonna text you back and be like, hey, I know you was passed out. I can see it in your face. So
hopefully I'm on very soon. I hope you get that call back very soon, or I get that call, whichever
if not,
way.
I'm going.
Whoever's calling who.
Next year I'm going with Ted with.
Heading into merge week, before we wrap up here, because I'm pretty sure we've covered everything, but in a second, remind me if I forgot anything. Who is, and I think we're all going to think of the same person. So if you want to go out on a whim here, go ahead. Who is in the most danger of not making the merge? Who stands out to you? Let's just say 1 or 2 more episodes before the merge, or maybe there's 3 episodes before the merge, whatever it is. Who stands out? There's no way this person makes the merge with where they're at in the game at the moment. I'll go first to give you guys, because I have kind of been thinking about it. I'll give you a couple seconds to think. We're all thinking Simon. Feel free to say Simon if you want to. I'm going to say Matty. He's in a really tough spot. I think turning down George is going to come back to bite him in the butt. And I just don't know where he fits. His whole game was part of that big meaty alliance. And since then, since the tribe swap, that has dissolved. David and Sam have gone on to work with Nina and Liz. Sean has kind of leaned more on Haley now as like his main ally. Where does that leave Maddie? Yes, you could say Maddie is with Flick. I don't think there's nothing that indicates those two are working together one bit.
No.
Past the bin vote. They've both kind of been talking with George. And to me, they're both kind of wild cards in this game. They're numbers that could be picked up, much like Simon. So I'm going to make the argument, if we're looking at who is in the most danger of not making the merge, I'm going to put Maddie out there. Abraham, go ahead.
Look, based off the current tribe structures, Matt is definitely on the bottom. And Simon is definitely on the bottom of his tribe. So if I had to say who wasn't going to make it, it's going to be those two. Because Simon has everybody disenchanted with him at the moment, and Matt just didn't make a decision at the right time. That's really the only thing it was, because Flick and Matt came to George with the same saying, hey, I'll be a double agent. Well, you're not going to go with both of them, and you're not really worrying about Flick. So unless Matt or somebody finds an idol, because idols are back in play, I would say Matt or Simon.
Tagworth, is there someone else?
Well, I will play devil's advocate. I do think that Simon, I agree. I think Simon is going to have some trouble making the merge, which breaks my heart because I wanted to make the merge so badly. And I think that they should just use him as a number. Whatever. Don't listen to me. But I will play devil's advocate and say maybe Flick. And here is why. I would like to see Flick go further, but when George had the chance to go to either Matt or Flick to ask to, join, he did choose to go to Matt. He did not go to Flick. Now, I'm not saying that I think he's going to work with Matt, because I do think that hesitation is not going to be there. But I do think that puts Flick in a worse position on the tribe because he doesn't see a way forward with her. And so that's why I'm slightly worried for her, and a little bit more worried than I am for Matt. I do think that they're going to be the ones going to tribal. in the next, iteration, the next episode. And I hope I'm wrong. I really like Flick, but that's who I think.
So there you go. If either of you guys listening or watching, or any of you guys listening or watching, like Maddie, Simon, and Flick, it might be tough to make the merge for them. But we'll have to wait and see next week. So we kind of just hit the halfway point of the season. We're on week 4. I'm pretty sure there's at least 6 or 7 weeks of Australian Survivor. I'm leaning more towards, I think there's 7. So we've kind of hit that halfway point. What are we thinking about the season as a whole? And I was talking to Abraham before you joined Tech with, I think. This week was obviously a little less exciting than last week, but I still think it was super exciting. It's just so hard to live up to what last week was, which was just pure insanity. So I'll go ahead and say, I think this season, I'm loving it. I mean, I have fell in love with Australian Survivor. Last season was the second season I ever watched, and I loved it. I know a lot of people had their opinions. They thought it was kind of dull at times, and we're all going to have our opinions. I loved last season. I loved the storylines that were in place. I also watched the first season I ever watched of Survivor Australia was Champions versus Contenders 2. And I love that season too. And there's just something, I think it's because it's new, it's fresh to me. They're doing a lot of what old Survivor used to do and didn't get rid of, like auction and stuff like that. So I think that really is what's making me fall in love with it more than any other franchise right now. But I think in terms, if we're looking at this is the halfway point, I think I don't know how you could get much better this season. I really don't. The story, I mean, the editing, the storytelling is just chef's kiss. It is, I'm invested every single episode. I have someone I'm booing. I want George out of the game so bad. I want Stevie to get George out of the game, not Simon. I want Stevie to make that move. I want him to be the death of King George's death to be Stevie. But while saying that, I also want like someone like Shawnee, who's playing a flawless game, in my opinion, make it all the way to the end. So I think there's so many storylines. There's so many people to cheer for. There's so many people to root against. I think it's just masterful television. Abe, I'll go to you first here. How are we feeling?
I don't want to see another Chinese buffet.
I need a
little buffet. I need a little bit of starving. I need a little bit of every reward is not just a overabundance of food.
We talked about this. It's the law. They have to feed them.
I'm like, can you scale it back a little bit? Can you knock off? Don't have the dipping sauce. I mean, because and when you're starving, every little bit counts. But you kind of take that out of play with Australian Survivor. But me, I love the challenges. I love the physicality of the challenges. I love that you have to work as a team. And nobody has the upper hand, because if we look at the makeup of the heroes tribe to the villains tribe, they would dominate. Now it's like, okay, who's going to be the dominant tribe? I just like the dynamics of it, how they're playing the game, the returning players. I know we got a lot of the new players voted out early, but I think it was a good mixture. It's probably 1 or 2 players. It's definitely one player that I don't know how she got by. I don't know how Rogue got on the show for this season, but definitely you didn't add anything to Australian Survivor. If anything, you kind of smudged Australia, the process of selection of candidates to be on the show. I think they could have done better with that. So, but as far as the season go and comparing it to Blood versus Water and getting to see those players and even talking to some of those players, it's just a great season. Now, what I don't do is I don't compare Australian Survivor to U.S. Survivor. And because just like you said, they have to give them food. Well, U.S. Survivor ain't got to feed you. So no. we see that part. Don't give somebody fishing gear and they can't fish anyways. It don't make a difference. Jonathan is the only one that could fish in the last 3 seasons. No. I got to take that back because they didn't show it. But my girl went out there and she could fish for my season. What's the name?
I'm trying to see how you got from how's this season to fishing.
Because Australian Survivor has plentiful of food, and Jonathan was the only one that could do the fishing. Yeah. But it's just both of the survivors are such a great experience to watch them unfold on TV. And as you start to meet the different characters, like this season coming up for season 44 is going to be unique for all of us because we've met some of the actual players, which makes you look at them different. Like I'm looking at George like, man, that guy is so nice. Nina is outstanding. Nina is my Ruby Tuesday person. We got to hit Ruby Tuesday at night. So I've enjoyed it. I think it's great. I think the way they put it together. I think some of the editing is better than U.S. Survivor's editing, because you truly sometimes you just don't know who's going to get voted out. I think that's the mystery when you go to tribal council, to keep that a secret as long as possible. But
yeah, Ben was shocking. We had no idea for the Ben vote out which one of the three were kind of. I mean, you could kind of sense which one it would, but it was all a prediction. But I mean, Abraham made some great points there, Tegwith. How are you viewing it? I mean, this season, now that we're at like the halfway point.
Sydney. I'm sorry, Sydney. I want to give you a shout out because Sydney was fishing. And that's it.
I am, I don't know if you know this about me. I'm relatively new to Survivor. I started watching in 2018. And since seen every single American season, and I've seen a good amount of the Australian seasons. Haven't seen New Zealand yet. That's next on the docket. The thing about Survivor to me is every single season, especially the live seasons, as much of criticism that I have while I'm watching it, I adore it. It is like live theater to me. It is, I like to see what happens. And so as I critique it because I love it. And I really do love this season. And I loved Blood versus Water, and I loved 43, and I love 42, and I love 41. Like I will watch and really enjoy pretty much every single season of Survivor, as much as I might say about it. So that being said, I think this is an amazing season. I think that you really couldn't go wrong with who they brought on this season, with people like Jordy and King George and Shawnee and Sean and Haley and all of these returnees. Like there is a Nina, and there was no way it wasn't going to be a good season. So I think it's really great. My slight worry with good pre-merge seasons is that the post-merge is not as good. And I don't think that it's the case all the time, but sometimes when those big characters go out pre-season, now they haven't this time, but when pre-jury and when, you have all these things, then post-merge, it's a little of a, not a letdown, but not as good. I don't think that's going to be the case this time. I think it's going to be really, exciting. We have the characters in that I love still. I'm pretty much rooting for and against everybody. And I think that's what you want. I think that's what you want in Survivor. I don't want somebody to hate. I want somebody to love to hate. I don't want somebody that I just want to love. I want somebody that I love, but I also hate that they did that, but I love. Exactly. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'm very happy with this season, and I cannot wait to see where it goes. I think it's going to be really amazing.
And I think the best part about it, none of us still have any idea how it's going to play out and who's going to win. There is
nobody better spoil me. I'll be mad.
There's at least like 7 to 8 people remaining that really have a chance to win this season. But yeah, I think that does it for us. I think we've covered everything heading into the merge week. It's just going to continue to get more exciting, and it's going to get more exciting for us here at Survivor Now as we start coverage for U.S. Survivor. We are at that time of year where they're going to start overlapping each other, and it's our busiest season. I kind of call it our Christmas season because it's just nonstop. Go, go, go. So we do have a lot of coverage coming out for you guys. Make sure to tune in sometime this week. Now, a lot of us are going to be at premiere parties, so it might not be Wednesday right after the show. Yeah, everyone but me, basically. Everyone else is cooler than I am. They don't come to Indiana. They never bring the premiere party in Indiana. If they had it in Chicago, I'd be there, or Cincinnati, or even Nashville. But no, they're all on the East and the West Coast. But anyway, they love going by the water. But anyways, so the coverage will be at some point this week, either Wednesday or Thursday. We will do a recap of episode 1 of U.S. Survivor. It is set to air this coming Wednesday. I forgot that it's just Thursday. This coming Wednesday, March 1st, 8 p.m., 2-hour special premiere. Is it really special at this point? It's 2 hours every season. It's the
It's
2
According to
hour.
Jeff Probst, it's going to be the best tribal of all time. So.
Yeah, I
Special,
mean, if
it's
you
special.
guys saw the TikTok he posted earlier, 4 things to watch out for this season. The most medical visits ever on the show. The first tribal is literally insane. I forgot the other 2. Those are
There
the
was
2 that.
the idol is public.
Oh yeah,
was
it's the cage.
one.
There's a cage idol this year where it's just sitting there and you have to just go and grab it or something, which they're very excited for. So yes, we're going to have a lot to talk about this week. I just ordered my buff for it, so I'm going to replace this buff with the new green buff because I got to represent my girl Claire. And then Tegwith, at some point this week, might be getting with, we haven't actually set in stone, but might be getting with my good friend David for our brand new show, Survivor Social, which is basically a second recap show, but they're going to get even more in-depth into it. They're going to get behind the scenes, or as behind the scenes as they can get. And they're also going to talk about maybe some of the underlying social issues, especially with U.S. Survivor. This is something that we've seen recently where there's a lot of moments that are way bigger than the game that sometimes we don't touch on the main recap show. So even if there's nothing to talk about in terms of social issues, these are 2 people who know Survivor, David and Tegwith, and I'm going to be tuning in every Friday, and I can't wait to watch because it is going to be amazing. I can't wait to hear you guys' opinions on all of it. And you can also play along. We made our predictions earlier. You can play our fantasy game. Head on over to Facebook. I'll put the link. Actually, stay here. I'll put the link in the description below. Hit that link and join our Facebook Survivor fantasy game. If you win, if you have the most points by the end of the season, you will win a Survivor prize pack provided to us by our good friends at Katie Tedesco Art. Abraham, you're not going to win. I'm not going to let you win, my guy. No, he might win. He might. Look, he won the last fantasy contest we did, so he might win.
Josh probably win.
Yeah.
It might be someone here. See if you can beat us. You're also competing against the experts per se. So see if you can beat us. Tegwith, are you in it? I know you have another fantasy
I will be
game
soon.
going.
I will be soon. I haven't done it yet, but I will join. So
I'm like, I don't know if we can get
out.
Tegwith. She's got another fantasy game. Is that still open for everyone to join?
Yeah. It's super simple. It's you don't have to think about it. You just kind of and do your stuff, and it's really fun.
Well, if you need a link to her TikTok as well, go to our About section. We totally redesigned. I did some house cleaning today and totally redesigned our YouTube. It's easier to find our videos, our playlist. We now have a channel trailer. Getting a little bit fancy here. But yeah, do you guys have anything else to add before we move on here to what's going to be a very eventful week in terms of Survivor next week with everything going on?
I'm just going to say it's going to be an exciting week. Not only do we have Australian Survivor going into the merge, we have U.S. Survivor kicking off, which says season 44. It's just going to be a great season of Survivor. So you're going to have a lot of Survivor next week. A lot of premiere parties going on. I know Sandra, they're doing a premiere party. Tegwith, she's going to a premiere party. Randy's going to be at a premiere party with his girlfriend. I'm gonna be at
not even. Party. You think I'm gonna get her to come over and watch Survivor? I've tried. Oh. It's just gonna be me and my dog.
I'm gonna be with I'm gonna be with Bryce and Wendell, the Wendell production, hanging out with them, enjoying and getting a chance to meet Erica. Never met her in person. This will be the first time I get a chance to meet in person, but it's gonna be all Survivor next week.
Tegwith, what do you have planned next week? You're going somewhere, right? I don't know if it can be said, but
I'm going to a premiere party in New York. I'm super stoked about it. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm get to leave work early for that. So
your boss is the best. I love your boss.
I'm just taking a day off.
But yeah, it's gonna be a really great week. One thing I did want to say before we leave is I saw this on somebody's Instagram. I forget who it was. But somebody reposted the Australian Survivor promo for next week. And the promo, Australian Survivor on their Instagram promo says going into the end game. And I forget who it was. So whoever it was, I apologize. Comment who it is in the comments below so that you can get the credit. But then they did a poll and they were like, I'm sorry, is merge the end game? Like, I don't think merge is the end game. And I was like, really great point. Why is Australian Survivor saying merge is end game? End game is like Final five.
Aren't they
Yeah.
saying it's the road to the end game though?
I
Because
don't
I
know.
was one of the people who voted it's halfway because I thought they were more saying it's the road to the end game.
Maybe they were, but in my mind, when I hear end game, I'm thinking final 3 episodes, babe. I'm not thinking like merge hasn't even happened yet.
I'll shout out our good friend, like super fan of the show. We love him. We got to get him on at some point. But Chris, I saw my friend Chris post
Was it
something.
Chris?
Yeah,
I think it might
Is
have
it
been
Chris
Chris.
from
I
Chris
think
from
it might have been
Australia?
Chris.
Yeah, Chris from
Oh, okay.
Australia. Yeah, he's been following since the get-go. I got to show some love for my guy. He posted
I'm glad
that
you
and then-
remembered who it was.
Yeah, posted a video explaining it, and he's like, it makes no sense to me. And I'm like, great point, Chris. Yes.
I thought it was a great point. So in the comments, decide whether you think Endgame is before the merge has even happened or not. Because
Yeah, because
I'm
Oh,
I
sorry, I
think
didn't mean to
that
cut
was a
you off.
Marvel.
No, go
I think it's a
ahead.
Marvel
I
thing.
just wanted to say, I don't even think the merge is going to happen until next Wednesday for us, or whenever the episode, next Tuesday. Sorry, that's when we can watch the episodes. I don't think the merge is going to be the first episode this week. I think it's going to be like the end of the week. There's the merge. It's kind of that merge week, so it's going to be building up to it. So I don't know. I don't know. This
so great
is why,
observation, Chris. Like 10 out of 10.
This is why we don't get paid the big bucks. Thank you
not
guys.
yet.
Yeah, not yet. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Make sure to turn on that notification button because more content continues to come out and you want to be here for the live chats. We might not go live, but the videos go live and we are always in the chats wanting to interact with you guys. So make sure to turn on that bell. If you're on Spotify, make sure to follow the channel and give the podcast a rating, preferably a 5 or maybe a 4, preferably, but we'll leave that up to you. But other than that, we will see you guys back on Sunday night for the next interview for the Eliminated Castaway for Survivor Australia. And Survivor US starts next week. So let's go.